Traffickers, those who don't have skill sets. Some may not be able to read, some may not be able to write. You find them working in your hotels, you find them working in the agricultural field, restaurants. But that doesn't mean that all employers are bad, but those are the areas where you have these vulnerable workers and they're being exploited. So with that, we are able to identify, my investigators are able to identify very quickly and then reach out to sister agencies who can assist, and sometimes, in essence, we would work along with them. There's a case that we had in Florida where there's over 700 some odd men that was being trafficked and working in the agricultural field. So, you know, you never know where the exploitation is going to hit.
Absolutely. We still have about 15 minutes or 12 minutes, something like that. Would each of you add something to what you've already said about your organization?
Sure. Well, let me just say that any of you guys can make a tip to the Alabama Fusion Center, whether it's a human trafficking tip or potential terrorism tip or some type of criminal activity that's going on. If you'll just Google Alabama Law Enforcement Agency or Alabama Fusion Center, either one, on both of those home pages, there's a See Something, Say Something little tab at the bottom. You can click it on, you can give as much information as you want, you can do it anonymously, or you can give us your information so that we can take that information. But I would say probably about 40% of the tips that we get at the Fusion Center for Human Trafficking come from sources, people I know that are victim service providers, or like the CAC interviewers, DHR caseworkers, people that are regularly coming into contact with victims. So it's not unusual at all for me to get a tip from a victim service provider. I do some background work, I vet the tip to make sure it's something that either our federal, state, or local law enforcement agency might be able to take a look at. It has to meet a certain standard. Every law enforcement agency in our state is short-handed, short of funds. You know, they're dealing with a lot of stuff, aren't you guys?
Yes.
They're dealing with a whole bunch of stuff. And these cases are very time-consuming. Their victims are really hard to work with. And that's where that victim-centered trauma-informed training comes into effect, because we really want them to understand these victims that may not present as a victim. They may go into a facility like the Well House and they may leave and go back into the life. Well, why are they doing that? You know, sometimes that can be very frustrating for law enforcement, but there's a reason for it. You know, somebody up here was talking about child abuse. Oh, I think it was Carolyn was talking about all of the women that she has talked to that have come to the Well House were victims of child sex abuse. That is the #1 precursor to someone who gets into the life of trafficking. And Chris was talking about familial pimping. We got a lot of that going on. I know as a CAC interviewer, talking with sexually abused children, that in many cases I have been able to identify that there was some type of money transaction taking place, or some type of anything that has value like money, like an exchange of drugs. A mother who may be letting a boyfriend have access to her child because he's providing a place for them to live. He's giving them drugs, that sort of thing. So that's familial pimping, when you're letting somebody use your child and you're getting something in exchange for it, or a cousin that might be doing it, or an uncle that might be doing it. So, and we do have both boy and girl victims. When I first started doing my federal training for human trafficking, I went over to Atlanta for a child sex trafficking seminar. And one of the first case studies that they did was a boy from Leeds, Alabama, that was trafficked in Atlanta. And it was a huge deal over there. The trafficker she was like a drag queen. She was like a famous drag queen. But this young boy who was questioning his sexuality, He was lured over into the Atlanta area and trafficked by this individual. Well, I had never heard this case before. It was a big deal in Atlanta, but it didn't get any airtime over here. So we know our victims. We have victims from Alabama that are being victimized in other states, and we have victims here in our state that come from other places as well.
Chris, would you like to add something?
Sure. If you haven't heard enough from me already, but this is, a super heavy and sobering topic. And I just want to share a little hope because, you all know, but, I've only been here in this state for about 6 months. And there's a lot of really neat things happening in this state to combat human trafficking on every front. And when I mentioned when I was talking before that it's courage and relationship that has made success in the places that I've seen success happen, that's already in place here. And so, we can, as citizens of this state, I think, really, we should appreciate the fact that we are primed to really make a huge difference in Alabama for human trafficking. And honestly, it's one of those things I mentioned, we're probably really only addressing about maybe 1% of what's really happening. So we might see in the next few years an explosion of arrests and prosecutions and all of that. But if we do, that's a good thing.
That's a very good thing.
It means everybody's doing their job well.
A very good thing. Thank you. Audrey.
I guess I want to point out that we are actively pursuing these cases, and especially now that we have the civil statute in place, where we're not just going after, the bottom people that may be involved in trafficking. We can also go after businesses that are allowing this to happen, and instead of them just shutting down, popping up somewhere else, we're able to actively pursue and shut down permanently these businesses and give the victims an opportunity to, come out of the other side.
That's great. Great news from all of you. Kenneth, one last shot here.
We heard words like resource, relationships. That's very important. Let's face it, law enforcement is stretched, but together we work together, we can combat this issue that's confront us. Mm-hmm. The biggest thing, I will give you an example of how it works very well. We were notified by Alabama Department of Labor. One of the units was contacted by the local authorities involving child labor. Apparently there was a young girl who had been transported from Mississippi over state lines into Alabama. At that time, HSI, Homeland Security Office, got involved. We were then all together, working together as one unit, one team, to address the issue because it involved labor. It involved them working in a factory and not being paid and not being compensated. So we have that component. We can go into an establishment and conduct our investigations where HSI, Homeland Security at the time, had a policy where they're going to go so far, but we was able to move forward. The local authorities was there. So we worked hand in hand. That's that relationship, to combat this, and it was successful. Unfortunately, we need more of that, and we need the public to be more involved. We operate on complaints. We operate on tips. We also do direct investigations. We go into any industry. We look at industries, whether it be the garment industry, whether it be the fast food industry. We are there, and my investigators are trained to home in on these type of instances, and that way we can get an early on involvement with our counterparts and work together as one, because it's going to take a team to try to combat this instead of individually.
I think what I'm hearing is very, very encouraging to me is that all of these law enforcement folks and all the agencies in the state, Chris, you made some comment about collaboration, all the state task forces, there's several, are working together, not just the state but the local. I think that's the key to getting these crimes out of our state, ending them and making sure that our children and our grandchildren and our neighbors' children are all very safe and hopefully never have to do this. We have almost 5 minutes. Would somebody like a couple of questions from the audience real quick? You're brain dead. I get it. It's late in the day. I understand. Anyone want to add anything? We got 5 minutes. Let's take it. Okay. We do have one question. Here you go.
I wanted to know how you got the tip that there was a child that was working.
The tip came in from the local authorities. They was brought in on a situation that involved domestic violence. And come to learn that it spilled over into other things. It's from that standpoint, and it rolled over into human trafficking. Alabama Department of Labor got involved because it was a minor. They have the Department of Labor, state of Alabama, have a child labor division. We have a working relationship with them. We have an MOU, Memorandum of Understanding, where we work cohesively together. They notified us because, of course, we have a longer reach, being that we're federal. And with that, we started working not just with the local authorities, but also with the Homeland Security, who was involved, and that's how it came about. Sure. It was a poultry industry. Yes. Very good question.
Thank you, panelists. I think they've shown us a lot of teamwork and what's going on in the state, and I'm very thrilled, and I think all of you are too, that we're all working together against these crimes. Thank you all.
And thank you, Pat McKay, for moderating that panel. Our final panel, which is going to be Q&A with law enforcement, because remember, this is federal, state, and local law enforcement. And I think it's great that you all get to come together and ask these questions of each other and seeing how this big piece of the puzzle works and where you fit in ending trafficking of human beings, whether for labor or for sex. I'm going to introduce the officers who will come up. And then this is going to conclude my part of the program because I have to go do the 5 o'clock news. But I'll be just outside the door, so some of you will be on television as you leave. Officer Lieutenant Darren Beams with the Tuscaloosa Police Council will be taking some questions along with Johnny Evans, Captain Johnny Evans of the Vestavia Hills Police Department, and Captain Janice Blackwell with Birmingham's Police Department, and Lieutenant Matt Davis with the Jefferson County Sheriff's Office. Uh-oh. Do we have enough seats there? So on this Q&A part, I'm going to get somebody else to take your questions for the panel, but let's just begin. I'll let you guys just talk about what you see. And also, are you a point of reference, point of contact for people in the public if they don't have those numbers to call? If they suspect something that's squirrely, should they call local law enforcement?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, that's one of the things that's troubling to me personally is I look around, I don't see a lot of local law enforcement here. It starts with us. It starts building those partnerships, and it goes up to the federal level with FBI, HSI, and that's troubling to me because it starts with us. Years ago, I was in the Vice unit in 2002, 2003, and human trafficking was not prevalent then. It was just you arrest the ladies, take them to municipal court. And every once in a while you do a John sting and you arrest some guys. You put your dispatchers or your female officers out there and you do a John sting to arrest a few people. And the commercialization of it was not prevalent back then. Along my experience, I went to the homicide division next, and I've interviewed families of children that were murdered for hours at a time. I've interviewed suspects for hours at a time. None of that prepared me for my first interview with a human trafficking victim. The wide range of emotions that they went through, it was difficult, but they went through a wide range of emotions. And I think that along the way, I personally realized that we needed to turn our investigations 360 degrees from the way it used to be. We needed to change to a victim-centered approach, and that's what we did. We have about 25 officers on our task force in Tuscaloosa County to date, and we changed to a victim-centered approach right away because it was just the right thing to do. Two of my officers, one of them has a degree in psychology. I don't know why they wanted to be a police officer, but one of them has a degree in psychology. One of them is a social worker. Those are the two people I pair to go into these rooms and talk to these individuals that's involved in commercial sex, the victim side of it. And it's a non-adversarial area. They're not handcuffed. It takes about an hour in the hotel room to gain some evidence of human trafficking. And once we see that, we bring them back to the office, not in handcuffs, not in a car with shiny lights on top of it. We bring them back, and we take about 3 or 4, 5, 6 hours. It's like pulling teeth. You get a little bit at a time. And we realized that this was the best approach to it. And along the way, I realized that through the interviews, the first year that I was commander of the vice unit in Tuscaloosa, we contacted 70 females. And I was in on the interview for most all of them, and I realized that in Tuscaloosa, they could come to Tuscaloosa, Alabama, a college town. They could make $1,000 a day. And they averaged a 4-day stay in Tuscaloosa. They were part of a circuit. They thought that kept us thrown off, and they would move to another city. But they could make $1,000 a day. To me, that was troubling. So I wanted to do something about the demand. And so I reached out to Cook County, Illinois, Sheriff Tom Dart, founder of it used to be the National Day of Johns. Now it is the National John Suppression Initiative. And this, for the second year in a row, we've participated, and we're the only local law enforcement agency in the state of Alabama to participate. In 3 short operations, 4 days in the summer of 2017, 4 days in January of 2018, and 4 days a few weeks ago, we have arrested 108 men soliciting sex in Tuscaloosa County. 108. We have recovered in administrative fees against those suspects over $27,000. As far as traffickers, we've seized over $25,000 in cash and 3 cars, another value of about $25,000. So we're trying to do what we can on that side of it. And each time we go out, we've got HSI, we've got FBI partners. I talk to Doug Gilmore, HSI, pretty much weekly. Cornelius Harris pretty much weekly. We all have each other's cell phone numbers, and we talk weekly. I talk to Teresa Collier weekly. Knowledge in this is power. If it's happening in Tuscaloosa, it's happening in Coleman, it's happening in Birmingham, it's happening in Huntsville, it's happening in Gadsden, it's happening everywhere. If it's happening in Tuscaloosa, it's happening everywhere else. And we need more partnerships. As Chris talked about, we need more collaboration. And I'm proud to say we've got it. They're there with us each time we do something, and it's power. If it's something that can go federal, obviously I want the most bang for the buck. I want to give it to the feds if it can go that direction, So that's the things that we try to do on our end, and we have a program that we train the hospital staff at DCH Regional Medical Center. Carolyn Potter came in with us and did that presentation. So did Kerry Hill, trying to get our ER staff there with the signs to look for. We do one for hotels. I've arrested 1 hotel owner, and we've arrested 1 general manager. You'd be surprised at how many of them want a free presentation about the signs to look for human trafficking. When you see those, I purposely had those put in the media for a reason. I wanted those other hotels to know what we're doing. And we've completed training with 10 hotels in Tuscaloosa for their staff about what to look for. We do one with the public. We've trained all law enforcement in Tuscaloosa County. Permian PD has came down and observed. Oxford has come down. Hoover has come down and watched us. And as Chris said, it's not. We're not seeking glory out of it. We're an open book. If there's a better way to do it, please let me know. We'll do it. We want to be part of it. It's not about glory seeking or anything else for us. It's about justice for the victims. It's about bringing prosecution against the people that's facilitating this, because it is the fastest growing crime, and and it starts at that local level. I wish that we could see more local departments. And it's not. Resources are short. Yes, 15 of the 25 I got are part time. It can be done. It's extra hours, but it can be done. You just got to find a way.
Wow, he spoke so long, I forgot
I'm
the
sorry.
question.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, tell me.
I don't have that much to say. What was it?
It's just tell us what you're.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
So let me. Oh, see, I don't have that much information. We have worked with Lieutenant Beans, and he has an awesome, very awesome unit, and they're doing a lot of things. But just to speak a little bit about the Birmingham Police Department, everyone has spoke earlier, sex trafficking is nothing new. But you would be surprised at the fact that it's new to some police officers. And when I say that it's new to some police officers, we always looked at it as prostitution. And when the lady spoke earlier about her daughter, and she stated that she wished that officers would address victims in a different way, I understand that. As police officers, sometimes we don't have that knowledge. And one of the things that we, as the department, I'm a member of the Family Justice Center. I'm sorry, Family Service Unit. And what we've done is train our officers how to recognize victims of sex trafficking. A lot of officers came to us and said, wow, I didn't look at it like that. I didn't see that person or that child on the street as being a victim. I thought that person was out there because they wanted to be. So it's not like that. And I didn't get a chance to speak to her, but I wanted her to know that knowledge is power. The police, we're working on the police to get that knowledge, to get that power so that we can recognize those victims and that we can do more for the victims. We're working with Family Court, DHR, the FBI, with Helen. We have a group, and what we're doing is going out, we're trying to put together something that we can help the victims of child sex trafficking with rescue and restore. And what we're trying to do is set up protocols so that we'll have something in place that we can help victims. It's important to us that victims know that we care about them and that we don't want to label anybody. So what the police department is doing is gathering that knowledge, not only from other agencies, but any training that we can get to help people, that's what we're looking to do. Within the police department, like I stated, we're a family services unit. So we deal with the children from the children perspective. Our narcotics unit, which has done a lot of operations with Homeland Security and ALEA, they are working it from the adult perspective. And at times we try to come together so that we can work together to do what we can in the city of Birmingham. The 2 days that we went to Tuscaloosa and worked with Lieutenant Beams, we really learned a lot. We've not had a big operation like so, and we're looking forward to do that because we know that there's a lot of trafficking going on in Birmingham. A part of our unit, when what we do is we work with juveniles, crimes committed by juveniles, as well as those committed against juveniles. For the month of August, we had 16 runaways. Year to date, we've had over 125 runaways. So when we look at that, we're wondering why. Sometimes there are things going on at home, and we don't always acknowledge that. We just say, okay, this is a bad child on the street. What we're trying to do is get the whole picture as law enforcement. Find out, why are you out here? Why are you doing this, doing things that your parents may not understand, or is something going on at home that we're not identifying with? So we're getting the officers to look at everything from a different perspective. As it was stated earlier, it's hard to talk to victims of human trafficking. So what we're trying to do is get officers to just handle victims from a different perspective and to understand that people won't always come forward. We have a place that's called the Prescott House. The Prescott House helps us a lot Prescott House, interview the kids. And there, we were able to get an understanding of what's going on with the kids. It would take not just Birmingham Police Department, not just Tuscaloosa Police Department, or the county, Vestavia. It takes the whole community coming together. So when you're out there and you see something, and I think someone said something earlier about see something, say something, it's important that you do. Don't worry about being a snitch, because we're trying to help kids. We're trying to help women. We're trying to help little boys. We're trying to help men that are out there against their will. And we're thinking that, okay, that's where they want to be. But until we find that out, we need to do all that we can to help. And I think as a department, we're changing the way we're looking at things, and we're trying all we can to do what we're supposed to be doing, and that is protecting and serving. So we're doing a lot of training, and we're looking forward to helping those victims.
At the Jefferson County Sheriff's Office, I can remember when we made the switch from viewing the women from suspect to victim. And it's completely changed the way we handle things. I think one of the biggest challenges that we have found, and we're fairly active with this, we partner with the FBI, and they have some experts available to help with debriefing or interviewing the prostitutes, and that's what they specialize with. So we try to make use of that rather than trying to just do it on our own. One of the hardest things is to get a victim, oftentimes, unfortunately, to get a victim to implicate her pimp, to state that she's a victim. They'll sit there and lie to protect the person that's victimizing them. It sounds really unbelievable, but more times than not, that's the case. And these fine people that the FBI has are really good at establishing very quickly a safe environment and getting them to get honest about their situation. Once that happens, then there's a wealth of resources that we can refer them to. But until we can get them to come to terms with the fact that they are being victimized, and I heard somebody earlier today talk about them being in love with their pimp. That's something that we see on a regular basis. They'll lie to cover for the person that's victimizing them. It's challenging. It's hard to, in just a matter of 30 minutes or an hour, whatever reasonable amount of time you would have to interview these ladies, it's hard to undo months and months worth of psychological oppression. So I think that going forward for the future, one of the areas that we need to work on improving is people that are specially trained, maybe even as far as psychiatrists, that would become involved with these things and help us when we encounter these people. Like I said, it's when we changed to view them as victims, we got busy and we came up with resources that are available. The lady from the Well House spoke about earlier. There's a lot of times we see drug addiction as driving this. Sometimes that's part of the grooming, is to get them addicted to drugs so that they depend on their pimp for their drugs. And the idea of going to a shelter or the Well House, for example, and not being able to get their heroin is terrifying to them. And you've got to try to overcome that. And I think that that's probably the biggest challenge that I've seen recently with these cases, is just getting the victim to come to terms with what's the reality of their situation.
I started policing in 1991, and one of the first things I was told is that prostitution is a victimless crime. That, you know, they're out there because they want to be, and the guys are there, you know, because that's what they're looking for. But that is so far from the truth. It's uncomprehending of how these people cover, like he says, cover for the people that are supposedly taking care of them. They're not taking care of them. They're grooming them. They're victimizing them. They're providing for them, which in turn is what they see. The people see, hey, this guy's giving me what I want. He's taking me to eat. He's giving me clothes. He's giving me this. But, you know, what he's taking from them is so much greater than that. You know, I had one girl that we were interviewing, and she said, well, this is the only thing I'm good at. Well, no, you just don't, you haven't applied yourself for anything else. And two, the victims, it's kind of hard because to have a crime, you got to have a victim. Well, these girls don't think they're a victim. They think we're out to get them, and when we're really out to help them. And until they realize that they are a victim, it's hard for us to make our case. One case we investigated, a girl spent 1 year in jail. 1 year in jail before she decided that, hey, wait a minute, this guy's not really taking care of me. What's he done to me? And we had one girl that took 2 years before she finally realized what was going on. So, and like he says, instead of taking the approach of them being a criminal, we really need to look into how long it's going to take them to get out of the, well, he's taking care of me role and into the, hey, he's taking advantage of me role. And if it takes taking them to psychiatrists or psychologists, like he says, before we can arrest them people, then we need to do what we can to make sure that they know that they're not, that they are the victim and not the offender in this situation.
To try to prevent this from actually happening. Because I'm learning about this because I'm at the symposium. But as a parent and a student, like 8th grade through 12th grade, like during the assembly when they're at school, because you can actually penetrate them and then they might not want to say, okay, this is happening to me, but they can hear it and then appear to hear it. And then they'll say, well, this is actually happening to me. But if they don't actually know what is actually happening, they're being human trafficked. Then how do they come about to report it to try to prevent them from actually getting into that cycle?
We have a program where we go into the schools and try to teach the administration of the school. The teachers and the administrators are on the front lines just like we are. I mean, they see these children 8 hours a day, and they see the change in the patterns of their behavior. And we have to show them those things to look for, and the parents as well, the changes in the behavior. We offer a program to go into the schools and teach.
Now, this is in Tuscaloosa.
Yes.
But I'm talking about the Hoover, the home was out this direction because I've never heard of this, and my son goes to Hoover School. So, I mean, you know what I'm saying, before I came to the symposium. So what is being done in other places? Because Tuscaloosa, you're active, but other places in the Birmingham metro area.
So in the Birmingham area, what we're doing is we try to go out to the various schools as well and speak to the students. Right now, and we talked a little bit earlier about officers. We're with the Detective Bureau, so normally what we've been doing is, upon request, we've been going out to the schools because of the shortage of the detectives that we have. But what we try to do as often as we can is to go out to the schools and talk to the students about sex trafficking. Any programs that we have the SROs in the school. We've also trained them, and they are supposed to put something in place where they talk to the students as well. And if you have a request, we can go to your student's school. Just let us know, and we'll reach out to the faculty, the principal, and ask if we can come over and, do some type of training, not only to talk to the students, but to talk to the faculty and staff as well.
I can address some of that as well. One of the wonderful things about our state is that our state legislature passed Aaron's Law, and I believe last year was the first year of mandatory implementation. What this law says is that any school that receives federal dollars in the state of Alabama is required to have a prevention program specifically for child abuse. And I can speak for the city schools here in Birmingham, the ones that are serviced by our executive director and one of our counselors. They specifically bring these issues up in the prevention programs that they do. And this is mandated for grades K through 12. And so Aaron's Law is something that you might be interested in learning more about and asking in your child's school, if it is a public school or a school that receives federal dollars, what your school is doing with regard to Aaron's Law implementation.
Good afternoon. I know that some states have John schools to educate the Johns on exactly, what they're doing to these women, what they're subjecting them to. Do we have anything like that in place in Alabama?
Yes, actually it's mandated. The Safe Harbor Act mandated that we do that. We had to develop our own Johns class. Anytime you have these type of arrests, it's mandated that you do that. We developed a program with the university, a retired professor from the university and the district attorney's office. They have to attend if they're a first-time offender, they attend 2 classes. And I probably won't go back to them anymore, probably. I sat in on the first one. It was kind of annoying. One of the gentlemen in there, he proceeded to tell me he knew the difference between a prostitute and a human trafficking victim. And I said, really, it takes me about 4 hours to figure it out. But he knew it within a few minutes. And one of them said, what's TPD's problem? It's just 2 adults having sex. No, not when you've recovered a victim that was 11 years old. When she was raped 10 times the first time she came through Tuscaloosa. No, it's not 2 adults having sex. But it's mandated by the Safe Harbor Act that they're, for arrest that they have to go through a class.
Thank you.
Any more questions? Well, thank you, panel.
No? So, we want to conclude, I do, by thanking you for your time and coming here and participating in this 2-day workshop that has been eye-opening for those of us who are not in the field. Many of you are in this field. I hope it's been an opportunity for you to have collaboration and ask questions of each other and get contacts, because what we've learned for sure is if we have not come across a victim of trafficking, we probably will, and knowing what to do is more important, I think, than anything at this stage where so many people are a part of this crime that hides in plain sight. I am running outside because I have to do a live shot, so some of you may be walking through my shot if you wait about a few more minutes before you leave. But But thank you so much on behalf of the Birmingham Civil Rights Institute and the many hardworking people at the FBI Birmingham Division. Thank you guys for allowing me to be a part of it and to learn along with our community. Have a good day.